ladies and gentlemen. I am just now getting all of my broadcasting and streaming set up, and then we are going to be sorting some Sphinx Moths today. I'm pretty excited. Like most of you guys, or some of you know, I am Trisha. I run Insectopia, which is just a thing that I do across the internet to teach people about bugs. And I have... Let's see. Make sure that this all goes right. Perfect. So I have Sugar Pie Honey Bunch stuck in my head this morning. I don't know why that is, but if you hear me singing or humming, it's probably that song. Alright, so we're going to be looking at a number of Sphinx Moths that we put on our spreading board a while back. I don't know if you guys remember spreading these guys with me. I think that the Twitch video is down by now, but variety of different moths and our antlion up here. So we're going to be going through and just taking these pins out very, very carefully, and then we're going to be moving the moths into this friend right here, because I have run out of space for large winged moths like these guys in my larger pinning boxes. So those pinning boxes, actually, we're going to be going through and resorting out because they're separated by collection, and I want to combine them all into one kind of large collection, right? Because they're all mine, so I want to make sure that they go together. Doop, doop, doop. So there's a handful of guys that I've gotta combine together. Even some of my, every now and again, I do have some butterflies and moths that I spread as a child. So I have some moths that aren't very well spread too that we'll be looking at, and I did them as a child, so no judgment when we get there. All right. So I just had an idea. I think I am gonna put the lid up there so that the moths are a couple inches closer to the camera. Alright, so what we're gonna be doing is we're just gonna be pulling these pins out from around the wings of our moth. And we're pulling very, very carefully the pins out from the moth's wings. Now, there isn't generally an order that I have to these. I just always make sure that I'm holding the paper down as I'm taking the pins out from around the wings, just so that it doesn't cause any harm to the moths. Look at how pretty she is. All right, and then before we're allowed to, there we go. Look at her, she's so pretty. All right. And then before we just take her main pin out of the center, we also have to take these pins out from around her body. I had put a couple pins on the front and the back to make sure she didn't spin. All right. And each one of these moths has a paper label next to them, so I want to make sure that those labels stay with the specimens until they have a final version, you know, like a real printed version. And I believe I have real printed versions of all of these in my pin bag. All right. So we're just going to start stacking them into this pinning box, and then once they're all there, we'll be able to see them together. Okay. So this is a notodontid this next one, and they are also called a ghost moth or a swift moth. They are very, very common out west in Arizona, New Mexico. I think I even saw them in Texas. This one I collected in Arizona. Oh, shoot. That was bad. I don't know what triggered that. So we accidentally splintered her wing a little bit because her body all pulled up when we were taking the things off. But it doesn't seem to have caused too much harm to her. All right, so what we are looking at with moths and really spreading jobs in general is we want to make sure that the end of the front wing is perpendicular to the body, a 90-degree angle. So if you look at this line right here, let's see, right about there, and then this line, those are going to be 90 degrees separated. Admittedly, if I was going to change anything about my Notodontid, I would pull the hind wings up just a little bit. But I think that they're done fairly well. All right. Now we're going to be really, really careful taking these pins out and making sure we don't stab ourselves in the finger. Oh, man. Make sure we don't stab ourselves in the finger, and make sure that this paper stays. We don't want the body to pull up like on the last one. Okay. So this is going to be a Sphinx Moth. If you look, the characteristic on a Sphinx Moth is that the hind wing is actually half the size as the forewing. So you can see that in her, that you can see that her front wing, the forewing, is about twice as large as the hind wing. She was collected at Gardner Canyon. She's beautiful. All right, and then we're going to pull the antlion off of here. The antlion didn't get very many pins, just these two to make sure that her wings stayed straight, and this one through the body. Antlions are one of my favorites. Hello. Hi, Joey. How did you get the insects, and in particular the moths? All right, I have been collecting across the country. So I drove from Philadelphia all the way to Arizona, and I went on a very large collecting trip. And so the Sphinx Moths and the moths that I collected, I actually collected at a black light. So I went mothing. Very cool. And so the Sphinx Moth, the Swift Moth, and these two on the outside are both Sphinx Moths. This one came from Gardner Canyon, so this one is from Arizona, and this one is actually from New Mexico, up at a free scenic peak. It's a free campground, the Angel Peak Scenic Area. Absolutely love it. You guys live in Ohio. There are all different types. There are some pretty cool moths in Ohio, guys. There are moths called Imperial Moths that look very similar to this one, and you can find those in Ohio. A lot of times, if you want to find large sphinx or large silk moths, especially I'm originally from Michigan, and so if you're looking for them in Ohio, I would say go in the summer and it's essentially like the first day of summer that the night gets to be about over 80 degrees, or over 75 degrees. That first summer night when it's really, really warm outside and you think, wow, this is a really warm night. You go outside and you go and check at gas stations and at white lights, because a lot of these big moths will come into large white lights, and if you don't have a black light to set up your own trap, gas stations are actually a pretty good alternative. Gas stations, and I also sometimes find big Sphinx moths in and around car washes, because they don't generally have very large, bright, wet lights at nighttime. I would be careful about collecting around, let's say, cars, like car lots, car dealerships. Car dealerships generally have a lot of lights at nighttime, but I collected this awesome Sphinx moth, and I haven't spread it yet because it dried out, because when I was collecting at a car dealership, I accidentally set off some motion detectors and then the cops and letting them know I wasn't doing any harm. I was just collecting bugs. All right, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to finish pulling out these pins, and we're going to check out the rest of these guys. Now, what's really cool, something that I absolutely love, is that as I'm taking these pins and these papers off of my moths, the colors from underneath the wings, they just seem so much more vivid when you're not, looking at them through wax paper. How pretty she is. All right, one left. Oh, there is one more left. Oh, on the side. I'm really excited to come up with the identifications of these moths, ladies and gentlemen, but I don't know them past their family level. Thank you. You rock too. So beautiful. All right. So when we are trying this one I'm really, really proud of, guys. This one turned out really, really well. Look how much bigger it is in comparison to that Sphinx moth we just pulled. All right, so obviously, I just mentioned it, but I do want to say it again. What we're looking at is this line right here. So if we look, this is the leading edge of the wing. So this is like the strong end of the wing. This is where all the strong veins are. It helps her fly. And then we look at the end of the front wing right here. And we want to make sure that the end of the front wing over here and the end of the front wing over here, they make a straight line across the body. All right, that's our goal. I think that I did it pretty well in this one, so that's why I'm really excited. And the hind wings, you want to make sure that they are pulled up enough that they kind of look natural, but there's not really a rule for the hind wings except making them look even. And so where this one, I would have preferred that the hind wing was pulled up a little bit. It's still a decent pin job. You can still see all the characteristics. I don't think anyone's going to complain about it. All right. Take me down to a paradise city where the grass is green and the girls are pretty. All right. Now, all right, let's pull out the other Sphinx moth, and then we'll do the let's do the other silk moth. So this is going to be our other silk moth here. Now, in Ohio, you don't have, in Ohio, you're not going to have this moth in particular, but you're going to have some that look very similar. In Ohio, you have a moth called the Prometheus Moth or the Chrysena Moth, and both of those are large 4-inch wingspan epic silk moths that are really, really cool to see. And a lot of times when people see them, they're like, wow, this doesn't look like it's from around here. It's like, well, a lot of times the large Sphinx moths that come out at night, they're not really seen by people because they're nocturnal. And I think that, personally, I think that moths just don't get enough credit for how beautiful they are and how hard they work. I think moths are awesome. And if I had to pick moths or butterflies, I think I would pick moths. All right. Now, this guy, this is definitely a man. He has huge antennae off the top of his head. And silk moths, like him... Here, I need a pair of scissors. Or just be very, very careful. Okay. There's a piece of wax paper covering its wing, and I want to make sure that all of the wax paper is off before we pull her up. Pull him up. Awesome. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this... I believe this is going to be one of the desert borers. So I think that the moth bores into a cactus. I'm not sure which one yet. I'm going to have to look into it. But I do know if you look up here at the very top of his head, let's see. Oh, I do have a unit tray I can show you on. He barely fits inside of my unit tray, so you guys are just lucky enough. All right. If you look at the very, very front of his head, you can see these really big, oh yes, those really big feathery antennae. All right. Those are essentially like very, very large noses. My male, buddy. My camera keeps wanting to go in and out of focus. There we go. You're in focus. Now, this moth has a huge antenna off the top of his head. It's kind of like having a really, really large nose on the top of your head. He can actually smell the female moths from over a mile away. And I bet you even further with those types of plumes on the top of his head. Hi from Ohio. Hi from Philly. Oh, man. So it's fun because I went to Michigan State University. So we had a number of... we were a little competitive with Ohio State, and I appreciate you guys all hanging out with me here. Oh, hey, we have a viewer from Cleveland too. Look at that, you guys. You're taking over. I love it. All right, so I have 3 more moths on this spreading board. I have 2 Sphinx moths and 1 more of the nododontids, or the swift moths. All right. And all of these last 5 moths, they all came from Gardner Canyon. Gardner Canyon is a really, really awesome canyon in Arizona. Now, Arizona is interesting for insects, butterflies, moths in general, because right there in very, very southern Arizona, you've got a number of large canyons. Madera Canyon, Gardner Canyon, Buena Vista, a bunch of other ones. And these canyons, they go from essentially... They There's a series of canyons in southern Arizona and Mexico that essentially funnel a number of really cool tropical insects into the United States. All right, so there are places in Arizona where it's the only place in the entire world where you can find blah, 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 right? Certain species of insects. Like, if we weren't talking about moths and we were talking about really awesome beetles, there's a beetle called a jewel scarab, and there's 4 different types of jewel scarabs in the United States. And 3 of them you can find in Arizona. The other one, the only place you can find it is in western Texas. I collected 3 out of the 4 of jewel scarabs on my last collecting trip, which was really exciting. Check this one out. All right, so this one's going to be another Sphinx. But you can see that there is this amazing, diversity in Sphinx moths, because this left one in my hand is very much, you can see that it would be camouflaged, and this one, you can see it would be very much camouflaged. It's an environment, right? If it was sitting on a tree, you pretty much wouldn't be able to see it. All right. But this one is a little, a little more colorful, probably a day-flying Sphinx moth. And if you look at them next to each other, right, they're going to have the same common name. They're both Sphinx moths, but they are definitely different. They'll have different habits, and they are going to be feeding on different things. All right. Where did I get all of these moths? I actually collected all of these moths myself over my most recent road trip. I personally love to travel across the country and collect bugs. It's my thing. And so I was working at the Philadelphia Insectarium and Butterfly Pavilion. I was the director of education. There's actually a whole story about that. I'm actually going to be in a documentary that explains the whole thing. It's being released on Amazon in December. But I was working there, and I resigned my position. And so after I resigned my position, I went on a 5-week road trip across the country where I collected bugs in Philadelphia and Missouri and Texas and Arizona and New Mexico. And then I've spent a little bit of time live streaming on Twitch and on YouTube while I have been spreading and pinning and making my collection. All right. So that's where I collected them all. Yeah. It was a good time. So let's see. I can actually show you this other swift moth. This swift moth I collected at a national forest called Coconino National Forest in Arizona. And Coconino, I was up near Wing Mountain, because Coconino is a fairly large national forest. By the way, if you are into collecting insects, don't collect in state parks. State parks, you're generally going to need permits to collect in. But it is legal to collect insects in national forests. All right? So if you're looking for good places to collect, spending time in national forests is a good idea. They consider it recreating. And not hunting. All right. This guy right here I collected in Coconino National Forest when I was out dispersed camping. So it was my first time going out dispersed camping and not with actual camp spots. So you drive through this highway, and then there's an area of the highway that you're allowed to just drive off of the road and park and then go make a campsite. And your car has to stay within 1 football field of the highway, is the rule for Coconino. But I was able to drive off the highway, set up my own little campsite, and we set up black lighting and brought this guy in. I didn't collect a lot of the smaller pretty moths, because when you got the small moths, they tend to not spread very well. After, a week or 2 of driving in the car, and I was not all the way prepared to do all of my spreading on the road. All right, so there are two species of six-spotted Sphinx moths. So I'm not sure which one this one is. I'm going to have to compare it to some reference images. But we can check her out. Alright, let's see. Alright, so I would call her a six-spotted Sphinx moth because... Oh, come on, baby. I pushed the pin in a little too far. That'll be good. Okay. Alright, so this lady is called a six-spotted Sphinx moth. Or that's what we are going to call her. And that's because if you look at the side of her abdomen, moving from the thorax back, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Where's your sixth spot? She might be a five-spotted. I thought that this was a six-spotted Sphinx moth, but she doesn't have 6 spots. So we'll have to see about her. I love the coloration on the forewings. I just think that, particularly, I like moths that have camouflagey front wings and then really pretty pops of color in the hind wings, kind of like this one. Were they alive or dead when I found them? When I collected these moths, they were alive. I bring my moths into a light called a black light. So I set up a black light and a sheet. And then over the course of the night, the moths will fly into the sheet. And when I collect, I don't spend, Anthony, are you about to ask me how I kill them? I can answer you. Okay. So, they were alive when I found them. And I always make sure that I'm not, I don't over collect, right? So if I saw 2 or 3 of these, I'm only going to collect 1 or 2, or if I saw like 5 or 6 of them, I'm only going to collect 1 or 2, right? I don't try and collect lots of duplicates just because I want to make sure that we're leaving populations wild too. But really there are so many individual moths and so many that you really don't have the ability to over collect these guys, and a lot of times the ladies have laid their eggs and stuff before they'll come into the lights. So there's that. Oh, I don't hatch them. I collect them off of a net. Yeah. I collect them a lot of times when you've got these larger moths. They have very, very strong muscles. These, in their thorax, they have these incredibly strong muscles that they use to fly. They're so large, right? And so for me, when I collect, I actually inject my moths with ethanol. So normally I have, a vial of alcohol around that I will have been dropping things like beetles and bees and wasps and anything that's hard-bodied that's not going to be messed up by liquid, I collect into alcohol. And then I'll actually take essentially a small syringe, and I'll pick up a little bit of the alcohol and I inject it right into the base of their thorax where the wings and their legs are. And that way we dispatch of them nicely and quickly, and they don't have the ability to beat their wings, right? We also collect into, I don't have any within my reach, but we collect into envelopes made out of glassine paper, and this is paper that is kind of like, you can use a wax paper as a substitute if you don't have glassine, and it helps with not rubbing the scales off of the wings. Because as you know, if you touch a butterfly or a moth, the color can actually come off on your fingers, right? All of these colors are actually scales. Yeah. All right, so we've got our... Oh, so pretty. I love them, guys. All right, so we have our moths taken off of our boards. I do have some grasshoppers that we're going to be pulling off, too. So let me go and pull those grasshoppers really quick. Let's see. Alrighty. Bye, Anthony. See you next time. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I have grasshoppers. Alright. This is a variety of different species of grasshoppers. I actually collected all of them from an individual rest area in Texas. I was actually pretty excited. All right. Because all of these guys, there's only about, out of any of the species, there's only like one replicate of each, right? So there's 2 individuals of each species represented. And I tried to collect male, female, but really it just ended up being like a bigger one and a smaller one in the hopes that, because I wasn't looking at genitalia really closely when I was collecting. So you'll notice that there are a couple of these grasshoppers that actually have their wings spread. All right, so they've got these really pretty hind wings, and so we wanted to kind of show them off. And over here on the edge, if you want to see, we have this guy right here. He's a Tarantula Hawk. All right, so he actually, he might also be a cricket hunter. He's definitely a pompilid, though. So he's a wasp that has the ability to sting his prey, whether he's eating a cricket or a tarantula. He's going to sting his prey. She's going to sting her prey and paralyze it. Then she has the ability to bury her prey in the ground. She'll lay eggs on it, and then her babies are going to eat the prey alive. All right, while it's paralyzed. So the large ones, the large tarantula hawks, their babies will actually eat an entire paralyzed tarantula alive, which is crazy. And really wild to watch a tarantula being like paralyzed and pulled across the ground by a wasp. Definitely seen it in Arizona. This is a little robber fly. All right, so let's get these guys off their pins. We're going to get them all mounted up. And I actually already have all of their labels pinned here, so we might even be able to label them really quick. Alrighty, so this one, he's pretty much all black. So grasshoppers tend to lose a little bit of their colors after a while. Grasshoppers have a, yeah, he's completely black. He's even hard for the camera to focus on because the camera doesn't know what they're focusing on. There we go. Oh, grasshoppers tend to have colors that fade over the course of time. And that's because their colors are pigmented colors, and pigments tend to fade. All right, so imagine drawing something with maybe a cheap marker. Imagine drawing something with a cheap marker and then coming back to it 30 years later, right? The color of the ink is going to have changed. It's probably going to have faded significantly. Well, grasshoppers are the same way. These grasshoppers that are bright bright green or even bright blue, bright pink, a lot of times those colors are pigments. Now, that's not the same with all insects. There are beetles that don't use pigments as their colors. They have what we call structural colors. And what that means is that their color actually comes from a crystalline structure on the outside of their exoskeleton. All right. So metallic, sad day. So metallic beetles have crystalline structures, and that's why metallic beetles' colors doesn't fade. They don't fade. For example, might as well pull out my Chrysena. We talked about him a minute ago. Alrighty, so this is 3 of the 4 species of Chrysena, these metallic green ones, all right? This one right here, you can see it's kind of this metallic green and silver color, and that is what we call Chrysena Gloriosa, the glorious jewel scarab. And that coloration is never going to fade. He will be beautiful silver and green for the entire rest of the life of the specimen. All right. These 2 guys here and here, those are Chrysena lecontii. They tend to be a little bit darker green, but they still have that metallic coloration. And check this out. This one is Chrysena bayeri, and it is a jewel scarab, but if you look really closely at its legs, look guys, his legs are purple. All right. They have metallic purple tarsi or metallic purple feet. All right. And they're going to stay that color forever, which I kind of love. Insects with colors that fade tend to be grasshoppers, crickets, praying mantids, walking sticks, any of the orthopteroids, really. So, Orthoptera is the scientific word for grasshoppers. Crickets, grasshoppers, and katydids. Any of those jumping guys with long legs and chewing mouth parts. Now, there are other insects that are closely related to grasshoppers. And those would be, let's see. And those would be any insect that has a simple life cycle or simple metamorphosis, meaning when the eggs hatch, they look pretty much like what they're going to look like as an adult, and they grow up through nymphal instars. So grasshoppers, a baby grasshopper, looks like a little itty-bitty tiny grasshopper with 2 little jumping legs, and it can jump around, all right? In comparison to maybe a butterfly. We all know butterflies start off as caterpillars, right? And so they have to go through a complete metamorphosis, a complete change to go from their caterpillar stage into their butterfly stage, all right? Grasshoppers don't do that. Grasshoppers don't have that that pupal stage. Now, neither does praying mantids, cockroaches, interestingly enough, termites. Yeah. And all of those animals with chewing mouth parts and an incomplete metamorphosis, they're called orthopteroids because entomologists just think those are in kind of like the super group is all of the grasshoppers. They're related enough to grasshoppers that we'll kind of clump them together, but they're not related enough to actually put them in the same group. This one was so pretty when I collected it. It was so colorful. He's not so colorful anymore. He's mostly just stripy. Let's see. Maybe I can There we go. So he's got these really cool striping. He's got this really cool striping on his hind leg and on his pronotum, that shield above his head. But when I collected him, he had also these like red and green colors in his body. And all of the red and green colors have dissipated. I bet you that now that the colors are faded a little bit, they're going to be a little more difficult to identify. I never would have guessed that I could pull off the road in Texas, get out of the car, and within 30 minutes collect 10 species of grasshoppers. And there were species that I wasn't able to collect too in that time frame. There were a couple of really big grasshoppers that I swear there were grasshoppers out there with blue wings, and I thought that I had collected 2 of them. And then when I was going through and spreading my grasshoppers, I kept looking for the ones with the blue wings, and I couldn't find them. But honestly, I think our grasshopper specimens are looking pretty fantastic. They are all even. When we are looking at grasshoppers, we want to make sure that, especially if we're making museum quality specimens, we want to make sure that that the legs are kind of tucked into the body. Because if the legs are all kind of flailing all over the place, then, if the legs are flailing all over the place, then they might get broken. We don't want the legs to get broken. And when they do get broken, we get sad. This one, I was pulling the pins out a little too quickly, and I broke his leg a little bit. Sometimes when you break a leg, the leg comes all the way off. This guy's leg... This guy's leg bent backwards. So we're gonna glue his leg back up. Good. Take me down to a paradise city. If anyone out there has questions or comments about what we're doing, hanging out, just let me know. Alrighty, there was not enough room in here for all the grasshoppers. We're going to see if we can collapse them in a little bit, like tighten them up. It's just being very, very careful to get the grasshoppers next to each other without knocking off any legs or letting your hands knock off any legs. I did make sure that the legs were standing up straight. So they are a little bit in the way, but it's way better for grasshopper identification to be able to see the inside of the hind leg. And for that, you kind of have to have the legs standing up a little bit. You ever play those movement block games where you have to move a piece and then make enough room for the next one? That's what I feel like I'm playing. But I think that we're going to be one grasshopper short. I don't think we're going to fit them all in here. I think that this might be the best we're getting. Let's see. Take me down to the paradise city where the grass is green and the fields are pretty. One short. That'll be fine. Alrighty, and we have 2 little tortoise beetles. These guys, I'm just going to move into the tray with them. We actually need to put the labels on all these grasshopper friends. We can do that right now, actually. Alright, I'm going to get out my pinning block. Maybe. Take me down to the paradise city where the grass is green. Alrighty, so, scissors. Do scissors walk off for you guys, too? I swear. There they are. I swear I can never find my scissors. It's like a game, trying to hunt them down. Alright, so this is our string of labels. Now, you may notice alright, this is our string of labels. Now, you'll notice that the writing is very, very, very small. We want to make sure that the labels don't take up extra space in our collection. Alright? Just trying to make it, oh, there it goes. Alright, so what I end up doing is I write 10 columns of 3-point font labels on one sheet of paper. And what I'll do is I will back the labels up right against each other until the very end of the series, and then I leave one space. In between, like, different types of labels, like where the labels are from. But you also want to make sure that there's no white borders around your label. Just just because you want to make sure the labels are as small as possible so that they're not taking up extra room. I'm just going to go through and cut these guys. We are going to need at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. We need about 20 labels. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a couple of these, and then we can get going. So let's see. I'll leave these guys so you can kind of see them while I'm cutting. So these grasshoppers came from a small town called Perryton, Texas, in Ochiltree County. Take me down to the paradise city where the grass is green and the girls are pretty. Alrighty. Alright, so we have a pile of labels all cut out and ready. We're gonna make sure, I found the pinning block. Look at me, we got all ready. Alright, so we have our pinning block. Generally, this is a pinning block from BioQuip. Generally, people will put their insect specimen on the top one, the locality label on the middle one, and the identification label on the bottom one. That will make all of your insects and all of your labels the same height. Now, that's a little bit difficult because with this taller one, sometimes it's not tall enough for little insects, and sometimes it's too tall for big insects. So I generally will eyeball the spot where the insect is on the pin, and then I will make sure that the labels are all as even as possible. So we're going to get into that so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So our goal is going to be to place one of the labels over the top of that hole, over the top of the pinning hole, and then we're going to kind of hold the label in. We're going to press the pin through the label, trying to get into a white spot. You don't want to mess with the GPS coordinates on this label, but you can go through a word like rest area, or you can go through a word like campground, because people can kind of guess what that word is even without 1 or 2 letters. I might even that's so funny. My mouse is gone. Alright, so I'm just going to go ahead, and we want the top of the label going up, going through a blank white area. Now see, that tall label, that tall one was just going to be too high. Alright, and then we're going to put them back. We're going to do that, I don't know, like 20 times. I'm pretty excited because I actually do have a new YouTube, I have a new YouTube video coming out. I think I'm going to start releasing YouTube videos every Wednesday. That's going to be my goal. My last video I did on antennal types because somebody asked for it in the comment section, and I'm okay with answering to comment section, guys. If you guys have comments, questions, I love to chat with you. I honestly do. And let's see. Sometimes if the pin is too thin, I will kind of help the pin by holding at the base of the pin and pushing through the paper. And then once it's punctured, push it with the main pin. And that's because if you have a pin that is too small and you go to press it through a piece of paper and that piece of paper is too thick, you may end up bending your pin. I have bent pins trying to put it through a cardstock piece of paper. And when you bend a pin, especially the pin that the insect is on, you increase the chances of that specimen breaking into a million pieces. Okay, maybe not a million, but maybe 20. Because once a pin is bent, then if you go and try and put it into styrofoam and it will like boing, that boing action on the pin will actually just throw body parts everywhere. It's no good. I actually lost the head of a fly 2 days ago to a pin that did that. And the unfortunate part is that when you do have a pin that kind of boings and the body parts go flying, I'm serious, they actually go flying. So you don't really have the ability to find them again. Imagine trying to find a fly head somewhere in a room, you know? You'll notice that all of my labels are going straight up and down. That's so that my collection... That's so that the labels are moving with the body of the insect. So on grasshoppers with... I've been putting all of my labels up down because I like when they're even. But a lot of times on grasshoppers with tucked wings, you put them up down. And if you have the spread wings, you put them left to right. That's kind of just the rule for museum specimens. So when I go to label my moths and butterflies, all of those labels are going to be horizontal. The argument for that is that the label actually helps protect the insect. So if your insect's body is going vertical, you should also have a vertical label to protect its legs. I don't know how true that is for insects that are larger than their labels, but I have seen it very, very clearly on specimens that their labels, if your label is actually a little bit bigger than the specimen, the label's definitely going to be protecting it because it gives it a little bit of bumper space. You don't have the ability to knock it into another specimen. All right, cutting more labels. I do have to get out of here around 4 because I need to make sure that I have a meeting today and I have to finish up that YouTube video so it can be posted on Wednesday. And I didn't have a Guess That Bug out on my Facebook page today, so I wanted to make sure that I have some more pictures for my Guess That Bug. If you guys haven't been playing Guess That Bug, you totally should. It's been really a great time. I post 3 microscopic pictures of an insect over the course of the day. The first picture is a very zoomed in photograph, maybe of the exoskeleton's structure, or maybe a couple veins on the wing. I did the exoskeleton of a Troglodytid that was really, really shiny. That was a really, really cool one. And then the second picture of the day is generally zoomed out and has a character in it that will help you identify the insect family. So for the tree hopper that I did, it was the hind leg had all of the spines that curled around its hind leg, and that's going to be a fulgorid. Or there's another one that it could have been, or Cercopid, I guess. But that's fun. And then at 5:30, and the third picture comes out, and it has the full image of the insect and what it is. And so over the course of the day, it's really fun to see like what people guess the insect of the day is going to be. And when you guess, I generally will give you an extra hint, because I like it when people guess. Take me down to the paradise city where the grass is growing, girls are pretty. Won't you please take me home? Yeah. Alrighty, so we have our grasshoppers. They're all finalized. They're final results with labels and everything. It's pretty exciting. Got everybody taken care of. And I'll make sure that these 2 little beetles end up. Actually, I've got my beetle unit tray here, so I have the ability to move them over right now. I got some beetles. We got some orthopterans. We're having a good day. Oh, my Dynastes has lost almost all of its coloration. She only has this little bit of pocket left on her colors, guys. Over the course of the last couple of weeks, we've been watching her change. This is due to a change in the humidity in the air. She'll go into this all brown color, whereas when I collected her, she was covered in that beautiful beige speckles. Okay. Sounds like a plan. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have about 30 minutes left. I don't know what I want to do with you guys. Let's see. We can take the last couple of these guys off of our pins. And we might end a little early today. Take me down to the paradise city where the grass is green. I'm going to take this guy and put him in here. Put this guy in here. And that's because this guy doesn't seem to have a label, and I want to make sure he gets one before he goes anywhere. Okay. This is cool. I think that this one right here is a nocturnal velvet, a male nocturnal velvet ant. Totally. Come on, friend. There we go. Cool. Even. Very good. Spins evenly. He's straight head on. Did he just lose a leg? No. Our hunter? And our robber fly. All three of these individuals came from Fort Davis, but they're So all three of these individuals came from Fort Davis, but their labels are not printed yet. So I'm going to have to do that. All right. I'm going to say thank you guys for hanging out, is what I'm going to say. I think I'm going to head off for the day. I have a couple of things that I want to prep for, and I don't want this to run over without too many things. Definitely going to sort. We're going to sort my collection on Thursday. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to go through and we're going to sort all three of the boxes into one. And then we'll have extra unit trays to do what we want with. That'll be cool too. So I thank you guys for hanging out with me today, for checking out the butterflies and moths, but also our grasshoppers as we're sorting and pulling these pins. If we want to check out our friends one last time, we have our beetles and our grasshoppers, but then I think what really got everybody going were the Sphinx Moths, or our moths that we put aside over here. Alrighty. Alright, I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope that you have enjoyed hanging out with me and checking out all of these beautiful creatures from around the United States. I look forward to continuing to do this. Please feel free to follow me on Facebook and on YouTube and on Instagram and on Twitch. You know, I'm on all of the places at Insectopia or at Insectopia 2015. All right, have a wonderful rest of your day. Now I have to find my mouse. Oh, there it is. There we go. Bye, Facebook.